Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Akio, and if you're interested in data analytics, startups, and big data, today's episode is for you. Joining me today is Alex Freberg, also known as Alex the Analyst on YouTube. He quit his full-time job to go consultancy and content creation full-time, and he gives us a little sneak peek into the startup that he's building. Fun little tidbit, he actually had his own granola company in college. That's really cool. I'll put all his links to his socials in the description below. Check him out. And with that being said, enjoy the episode.
Beyond coding.
I always have considered myself like a dad first, so like, or a husband first, because uh, as important as my work is, like as serious as I take it, I try to put them first. And so most of the time, like I cater my work schedule around like my family stuff.
Yeah.
So, I think that it's a healthy balance and I do work a lot. But because I work at home, like I work remote, I can work whenever I want to, wherever I want to. I'm able to really I do it my way.
Yeah, I can imagine. I first and foremost really like that about you, but I'm assuming that decision kind of weighed heavily on you as well when you decided to kind of go off on your own and go content creation full time in what you're doing now. Was that kind of was definitely on your mind, but did you consider the risk involved with that as well?
Yeah, and it's something that even about over a year ago, because I've only been doing, I quit my job in end of December, and
Yeah.
now it's March, right? So like, it's only been 3 months,
Mm.
or like 3.5 months. But I had been thinking about it for the past year. Like as things started to grow, I had this kind of side business in the background of like consulting and working with tech companies and startups, and it was going really well. And I was like, this might be something I want to do later on full time.
Yeah.
And so as it started to get more serious, like I was getting bigger contracts and I was getting more work, I was like, if I did this, it could work out really well, but then I lose a lot of things. The stability of a full-time job, um, and just like the security of, for all those benefits that you get with working at a full company or
Yeah.
full-time, job. And so that was the biggest thing for me is like I just wanted to make really certain that I had everything set up. So now that I'm here, I'm 100% like happy with where I'm at. I'm really, really happy that I did it because it's gone exceptionally well and just things have continued to grow even now. And so I think I'm positive I made the right decision. But yes, it was very nerve wracking. Like I was very nervous about it. I tend to overthink things a little bit sometimes, and so I went into, my wife calls it analysis paralysis. Like
Yeah.
I overanalyze. I run all the numbers. I had multiple you documents like set up for all the different things like cost. It was just everything, like everything I was could imagine. I was like focused on it, and so but now I'm here and I'm over it, and I'm really happy that I did it.
Yeah. For people that are considering going on off to their own venture, I guess, or starting something of their own, do you think your concerns were were they too much, too many concerns looking back now? Like, were they valid or did you make them kind of hyperbolic, I guess?
Well, that's a good question. I think that I may have over worried a little bit.
Mm.
I think the biggest thing for me was that things change in this kind of world of like creating content, and contracting even can go and ebb and flow. And I was just worried. I was like, what if like the work dries up
Yeah.
and I had no money? But by that point, I had a pretty steady flow, a pretty steady customer base. So I think, if that person who's like thinking about doing that already has like a pretty good customer base or like client base and is consistently doing it on the side, if you switch over full time and can dedicate all your time to those clients, they would be even more happy with that. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, for me, I think I overthought it quite a bit.
Interesting. I like that your wife said like you overanalyzed or even to the point where it was
Yes.
analysis paralysis. Also, because on
Yes.
YouTube, you're known as Alex the Analyst. Can you
Correct.
walk me through kind of how that name came to be in the first place?
Sure. When I actually had a YouTube channel before my current YouTube channel.
Mm.
It was the Berg Source. So like my last name is Freberg, so
Completely
it's called the Berg
different.
Source. But it was around watches. Like I started a channel based around reviewing watches because I love watches.
Nice.
And that was like my first venture into YouTube. And Like it was super small. I never got more than like 100 subscribers, but I was like, I really like this, but I didn't make a lot of money at the time. I was like, I can't afford to keep buying new watches. I can't afford to keep like doing this.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what else could I make? And when I really got to like thinking about it, because I was like, I really enjoy making the content. I was like, what could I do that could actually make an impact? That I could actually do. I was like, okay, I really like coding. I really like data analytics. And so I didn't actually create Alex the Analyst first. Like I had actually saved or created an account. It was like it was only Python. So I was going to focus only on Python stuff,
Yeah.
creating projects and applications, and because I love Python. Um, and I called it like I think it was the Python Master, something like that. And then I was like, that's really niche. Like it's really, I think it's too focused because I
Mm.
was like, if I broadened it to what I do for a living, which is data analytics, I could do data analytics and then I could also do Python stuff.
Yeah.
So I could do both. And so I was like, okay, let me broaden it up. Um, and then I did what I always do is I made a spreadsheet of all these different names. And I was just like, let's just keep it simple. Like, what am I doing? It's like, and then I came up with Alex the Analyst and it really stuck. And I think it was a good name. I don't know. There could be a better one out there. I don't know.
It's so catchy, and I love that you said I did what I always did. I made a spreadsheet. That's hilarious. Yeah, that's really cool. I love the name. That's basically it. How
Thank you.
did you? I was gonna tell a different story actually. When I got my first job when I was 16, got my first paycheck, and the first thing I got was a watch because I was like, I'm a proper adult now. A proper adult needs a watch to go with that as
Yeah.
well. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you mentioned you have a background in data analytics, and when I came out of university, that was kind of one of my options when I was looking at jobs that were out there in the market. But for me, there's not really a fine line that says, okay, this is the difference between, for example, what you would do as a data analyst or a business analyst, or even you have analytics analyst. Like, what would you say the biggest difference in those roles, or even a few of those, are when you're looking at the job market?
Yeah, that's a question that I get asked all the time because uh, everybody's experience is different. Even
Mm.
my experience is different. I can give kind of like, and I'll do it in a little bit. I'll give you kind of a general overview. But even my experience from company to company, and I've worked with several, and I've consulted with a lot of companies, and what their definition is of data analytics or business analytics or all these other things is it's just depends on the company, right? In general, um, typically I say data analytics is, where you're working more heavily on the coding, you're working more heavily on the visualizations.
Mm.
And you're analyzing data, right? That's what a data analyst does. But then business analyst is working more heavily with the clients.
Okay.
So, typically when I say, people ask, should I become a business analyst or data analyst? I say, well, do you have more experience as a data analyst and do you enjoy more of the coding aspect? Or do you have less experience, maybe just a little bit of SQL knowledge and Excel knowledge, but you really like working with clients and helping them figure out their problems? That's usually where I start. Like, I'm like, okay, go down the data analyst route or the business analyst route. Um, but again, even at my company where I used to work, which was a Fortune 500 company, their definition was a little bit different. The
Mm.
business analysts were kind of internal, working with stakeholders, but they were expected to code just as much.
Yeah.
Um, and so, it's just, again, I think every company is different. That's the tough part about tech in general, is that a data scientist in Silicon Valley could be a glorified data analyst, whereas a business analyst here could be a data analyst at another company. It's very like company centric, or just based off how they define their roles.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great perspective. Context dependent, and also company probably in size. Because if you're
Yeah.
working at a small scale startup, I guess, the role that you're going to do is going to be so multifaceted because they can't leverage the amount of money they have in different roles and specialities in there. So your role is going to be more multifaceted, more of a generalist role, and then kind of an umbrella term could be either data analyst or business analyst. And in a bigger
Yeah,
company,
for sure.
they can have those specialities, and then you can have different skills in there as well, from junior, media to senior, and what have you, I guess.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's actually been exactly my experience because when I started at my first job, I was a data analyst, but I was at a really small company, like less than 50 people.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like this startup mentality. And I did everything. Like I was the business side, I was the internal side. I did a lot of coding, I did a lot of visualization, I did everything.
Yeah.
Then when I got to the company that I just quit from, which was a very large company, every role had exactly, here's what you do. Like I was on the data collection team.
Mm.
And then there's like other teams. So then there's like, the data science team, the data visualization team. And so I had like my lane of heavily coding, heavily working with databases, ETL kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't work at all with the visualizations, or at least I never built them. I just kind of like made my recommendations.
Yeah. Interesting. Would you advise kind of a similar pathway, like starting out in a more multifaceted way and then finding your speciality, or more so starting with that speciality in mind and building up fundamentals before you go multifaceted, I guess?
Yeah, I think in like a perfect world, if you could choose, I think, and oftentimes you don't get the choice, right? Like you get what you get sometimes, and you go with what you get.
Yeah.
If I could choose, like if I had the choice, I would go more generalist. I think, or more like small company type mentality where you can do everything.
Yeah.
Because I learned that I really liked the coding side of things. I really liked working in SQL. I really liked working with Python. I like visualizations, but not as much as I do like the ETL automation side of things. So I got to experience the whole range of things that I could do. And then I was like, I really like this. And then in my next job, I got to only do that, which I loved. So if it's possible, I think generalist is better, although some people don't have the option, right? They just get offered a job and sometimes they just, have to take that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because that has a lot of similarity with my own journey as well and how I got to this role in the first place. I started in a role very consciously being like, okay, this is a role where I get to touch on a lot of aspects because I have no clue what I want to do, no clue what I want to specialize in, but this is a huge playing field for me. And if I want to play left, if I want to play right, I can do it basically. And that's where I started off. And through that, through a lot of learning what I like and even more so learning what I don't like to do, I found what I love to do, and that's what I'm doing right now in kind of a software engineering position. So I think I would align on that, but it's really hard to put that in practice and to aim for that, I guess. You have to be kind of lucky to some degree as well, or create your own luck to some degree as well. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's, again, I was really lucky. That path happened for me, but it was kind of by accident. Like I never definitely did not choose it. Like it just was.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, you touched on this in the call we did before this recording, that you have a big passion for education, right? And with everyone that has that passion, I always think it's interesting to know where that comes from. Where would you say that comes from?
Yeah, I have a lot of teachers in my family. My dad right now is a headmaster of a school. So like he's been a teacher for 30 years. And then he was my teacher when I was in high school. So like, yeah, my family is a bunch of teachers. And so I've always liked teaching. I even, when I was growing up, I was a tutor for a lot of different things. Like I was a tutor for the TOEFL, which is like the entrance exam for, students outside of the United States.
Yeah.
At least the people I were teaching were from China. So I was teaching people how to do that. And then I always tutored in like algebra and stuff like that in college. And so I always really enjoyed tutoring. I also did guitar lessons for a while. So like I would teach people guitar.
Nice.
And so I've always enjoyed like working with people, mentoring them, that kind of thing. And even in my job, like before I started YouTube, I would mentor people and, take in like junior data analysts and kind of teach them everything. I just always really, really enjoyed that. So, I think it runs in my family and I kind of grew up with that. But then I also like throughout my life and career and education, I've been doing it as well.
Yeah, interesting. And in finding YouTube, you have kind of this one to many in the way that you educate people. Have you since, like, do you still do those one-on-one sessions in mentoring or coaching?
I did it up until 1 month ago. Like I just stopped a month ago. So I've been doing mentoring for over 2 years in data analytics. Like through my YouTube channel, people will come to me and do that. And I'll be like, yeah, I do. I have a program.
Yeah.
And I had like a wait list of like, eventually like it was over 500 people. And I eventually had to stop the wait list because I was like, I will never get to those people. Like I will never get to the end of that list. And so then as I started my full-time business, I really just wanted to focus on my business, growing my business, making sure it was successful, like taking care of my family is priority number one. So,
Yeah.
having a revenue stream where I could pay my bills and do that stuff, took more precedence. But I've always enjoyed it. I only plan on stopping for a short while. Like I'm hoping next year at the beginning of like 2024, I can start it up again once I have everything established and like, things are going well.
Yeah. Yeah. When you find yourself in a position where you have so many things that you love doing, you have to pick and choose like which ones you actually
Yeah.
can do. I think that's a good
Yeah.
position to be in. But for me, I always struggle with deciding then. Like, do you find yourself in that way as well, where there's like so many things that you enjoy doing? It's kind of a struggle to say no to some things in that way.
Yeah, and I think I hit a big like a peak. I don't want to call it like anxiety, but a peak like I had so many things at one time
Yeah.
that I had to like really step back and like reevaluate my priorities. And that hit about like probably a year ago. Um, I had my job I was doing full time. I had my YouTube stuff. I was doing consulting on the side. I was doing mentorship. I'm building like lessons and all these things. And then I have my family. And so like I had a ton on my plate and I had to really step back and be like, okay, like, what can I let go? What do I need to start saying no to more? And I had to do that. And so now over the past year, I've gotten really good at it. I'm like, okay, I know what I can do. I know what I can't do. I know what fits well in my schedule. And so I think I kind of have it all down to somewhat of a science now.
Yeah.
But I think that, as new opportunities arise, I kind of do a reevaluate like priority levels and what I want to focus my time and energy on.
Yeah, interesting. When we zoom into that, like what made you realize that the things you were doing, like it wasn't a sustainable thing to keep doing all of those things or to keep all of that on your plate? Like was it an event that happened? Was it like a family that had a conversation with you? What triggered that?
No, it definitely wasn't like anything bad. It
Mm.
was like, because again, I've always prioritized my family first. Like
Yeah.
I've never like, focused on work too much. I've never focused on like YouTube too much. I think I've had a really good, like I've always prioritized that, but it got to a point where I had it again. It's like a good thing. Like I had so many companies reaching out, to like consult with them and to do webinars and all these different things. Where I was like, I want to do all of them,
Yeah.
but I like if I'm looking at my calendar, I'm looking at it honestly. I can't fit everything in and spend time with my family. Like I would need to like get rid of my family to like do all this other stuff. I'm just not going to do that. Right. And so, that really was it. It was just kind of a slow boil until it
Mm.
got bigger and bigger. And then I was like, I need to take things down a notch just so that I can, oh, hey, Rosie. Just so that that's my dog.
Yeah.
She's in here because she got spayed the other day, so she needed some attention. Um, but yeah, I mean that's really all it was. It was just so much stuff kind of slowly boiling up that I just kind of had to take a step back and prioritize.
Yeah. I think ambitious people and people that love doing a lot of things, I think at some point they'll have that. And I've had it through people talking to me and saying like, hey, we haven't hung out in a while. Like, what's up? Where I was like, yeah, I've been working in evenings and stuff like that. Or even where I wrote down at the beginning of the year, this was last year, what I wanted to do for that year. And then I was doing all those things and something new would pop up and I really had to evaluate if I would let go of the things I was doing or actually say no to that. And it's hard to decide where someone comes to you with something enthusiastically and you really want to do that, except you just really don't have the space for it. Like it's a sad thing, it's a good thing, but then saying no is something you have to do. Otherwise you're gonna burn out, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Can you walk me through the company that you're building, not just on a content creation side, but more so the company that you're starting up together with I don't know the party you're working with. I don't know if you want to name the name, but that thing.
Sure. Yeah. So I have one like umbrella company is what I call it. So like it's the company that it's called Alex Analytics.
Yeah.
And under that umbrella, I have two separate entities below it. Uh, sorry, Rosie wants to join the call. Um, so the first company is Alex Analytics, where I mostly focus on consulting. That's where I do a lot of working with companies, and if they want my services for a lot, like I just do a ton of different things. So it's
Mm.
sometimes I'm going in and actually implementing a new like business strategy and helping them with their analytics team. Sometimes they want to help me market their product or, review their product. So it varies very widely. But that's right now, that's kind of my main business.
Yeah.
Now, right on the other entity, and under that, I was as well as like my YouTube stuff. The other entity right now is something that I'm building, and I've been building it for the past year. It's really close to being done. I have all the content completed. We're finalizing the website probably in the next like 2 months. But that's mostly focused on like helping people become data analysts, but more, I don't want to say professionally, because like my YouTube stuff is professional, but like it's with the building courses, and I don't know how much I want to talk about it because I don't want to like I haven't made any announcements yet. But it's going to be a fantastic platform to help people become data analysts, and I think it's going to be a major kind of competitor to a lot of companies out there. And I'm hoping that because of how good my audience is, that I can really like have a good hold on the market, and people will trust that I have their best interests at heart.
Yeah. So we haven't discussed how much you want to talk about it. So just cut me off when you feel like, okay, I don't want to discuss this
Okay.
part. But you mentioned you're not building it yourself, which to me is a very
Right.
interesting dynamic, right? Because you have programming knowledge, you know what being in the field is like. I mean, you're still consulting in a way now, yet you now are on the customer side. So someone else is building this thing. And for me, looking at, or if I were to put myself in that position, if things are not going as how I would build it or how I would envision it, I can see a lot of friction in there. Like, how's that process been so far?
Yeah, that's been an extremely eye-opening part, because normally I'm the person who builds things. I'm the person who helps people.
Yeah.
But it's been really eye-opening because I get to take a step back and let them do what they're great at. So I'm working with a web development team, and they're phenomenal. And what they've been doing is helping me like build out this website. Now, typically, if you're a startup, which this is kind of like in my mind, this is like I'm creating a startup.
Yeah.
When you're creating a startup, you want um, to be in control of everything. You want to build it exactly how you want. But that's not my specialty. Like, I'm not a web developer.
Yeah.
So these web developers are like building something that's really complex. And a lot of these startups, they'll build it based off of an already existing platform. Like, they'll integrate a lot of different platforms into one website to build something, which makes it really easy, really cost effective. But what I'm building it's a little bit more complex than what you typically can like get out the box of anything. And so it's very technical, like super technical. And so, when I'm working with them, they've told me, they're like, and I don't, I'm not trying to like pat myself in the back or anything, but they're like, you're one of the best clients to work with because you know all the background stuff. So when we get on a call and I'm like, okay, they're like, this isn't working. I'm like, okay, let's actually look at it and I'll see if I can help figure it out, because I understand the data. A lot of this has to do with databases on the back end and integrating that into the front end and how that all interacts. And so, we'll dig into it, and I can actually offer like advice and my thoughts, and they really like that. I think the other good thing is that I've worked so much with this stuff that I know that things don't go perfectly. So like, I think I'm a pretty ideal client because when things don't go well and something gets pushed back 2 weeks, I'm like, don't worry about it. I'm like, I get it. I know how that works. I know how it goes. And they're always like, thank you so much for being understanding. And I'm like, yeah, that is what it is. But it's been fantastic because they are definitely the experts, and they've given me a lot of ideas that I didn't even have when I first conceptualized the website, or like this like, startup. And so, it's definitely been a really good relationship, and they've been really fantastic to work with.
Yeah, I can imagine so. I mean, from a customer intimacy point of view, that's what you want, right? From a client perspective and from a perspective that's delivering in that way, that kind of equal level of relationship and conversation, then that is a win-win on both fronts, right? Because this is a man, sometimes my English escapes me, but it's a collaborative thing, right? You're doing this together. And it doesn't really make sense if one of the sides wins and the other one loses, because then both sides lose. So the best sense or the best case in this way would be a win-win. So I love that you're doing this collaboratively and together. Like, does it feel like you're part of that team then as well, or do you still feel like kind of the customer seat, I guess?
Yeah, I definitely feel more of like I'm on the team. Um, I'm working with a lot of web developers, software engineers, and again, it's I love to build things. Like I've always loved to build different websites and applications and different stuff. At least since I got into like tech,
Yeah.
I just love building projects. And so this to me is just like one big, big, big project. And so it encapsulates a ton of different, really technical, difficult projects and technologies, and you're putting it into one. So like I'm learning a ton. I think I'm learning a lot more than they are
Mm.
because some of these things they haven't built out before. And so as they're learning, I'm learning with them. And
Yeah.
so I feel like I'm paying for like an education in software and web development. Um, and so like my knowledge of like different tech stacks has grown exponentially, especially on like the software engineer database side. And just like integrating applications into a website. I mean, a year ago I didn't know as much, like a fifth as much as I know now, and so it's been really really fun just to learn everything because like I love building. It's super super fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. I can see a lot in how you would enjoy that process, basically. And then what I was
Yeah,
wondering is, you're building towards a point where you're going to go live, right? Like with every MVP
right.
you're building, or with every startup, at some point you're going to put something live, and it doesn't have to be digital, it
Yeah,
can be physical. But as soon as you're live and the product is out there, that's when gears kind of shift, and you have to go into this progressive mode of incrementally adding more value and improving in that way.
right.
Like, are you consciously thinking about what that way of working then is going to be with you? Like, are
Yeah.
you going to focus on something else in the way that you're doing it?
My hope is that this becomes my main source of income.
Mm,
Um, my hope is that this becomes like something that I can focus all my efforts on
yeah.
eventually. But when I first launched, I have my, like you said, my MVP. I have it already completed. Like it's at least the content. The content is already there. I already have my next a year and a half's worth of content lined up. I just have to
Wow.
build it. So
Yeah.
like I already know exactly what I'm doing each month once I launch.
Mm,
Um, but in terms of like, I guess in terms of, you know, incrementally changing it, I think it'll kind of ebb and flow because I will be I will be the only person creating content for this website.
mm.
I'm not, I guess I added, again, I'm not trying to like, I don't know how to say this. I'm not trying to give away too much about like everything that's in it. Um, but I'm not hiring anybody to create any of the content. I'm not hiring anybody on as ghostwriters or anything. Like I'm doing
Yeah.
everything 100% all my own because I just really, really, really value my audience. And I know my audience doesn't want content from someone else.
Yeah.
They like how I do things, the things that I do. So I feel like it'd be a disservice. But because of that, it's a ton of work on my plate. Like, but I'm willing to put in the extra effort because I know my audience will appreciate it and value it more than if I just hired on a bunch of people and just slapped it together and was like, here you go. So yeah, it's going to be a lot. And another part of it is like I hope it's going to get a ton of traction right away. So like, we're having to, or I'm already talking with the web dev team about like putting in safeguards for, the website crashing and things like that, because I know that it's very much a possibility. And so there's like a lot of extra things that you may not have to do with like your typical startup because I already have a very large built-in audience that I
Yeah.
know will want to go to it because I know my audience very well.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, you don't want to lose that sense of authenticity, right? I think
Right.
previously in 10 years before, even 20 years, you would buy into a company and you would love the product, but you would buy it because of that product. And I feel like there's a shift and people are no longer buying into a product, but they care about the people behind it. They care about what it stands for, what it does, the sense of authenticity and the relationship
Right.
with someone way more than just the thing they're buying. Like they're buying
Right.
into an ecosystem of like personal sense in there as well. And especially with YouTube, there's now a sense of community as well, and a sense of collaboration and discussions, which is way more open than your typical product would be in the first place. So I like that you emphasize that that is going to be a focus in there, and it's not going to be someone else. It's going to be you doing that thing that needs to be done. That's really cool.
Yeah, and that is, I would say that's like one of my top priorities or top concerns when I do anything. So like, on a day-to-day basis, probably per month, I'm reached out to by like 20 different companies.
Mm.
Usually like every other day I'm getting something. Hey, could you sponsor this product? We want you to make a LinkedIn post. We want you to make a video. I say no to 99% of those because I'm like, yeah, you could pay me a lot of money, but I know my audience so incredibly well.
Mm.
Like I know what they want, I know what they like. Like the majority of them, like on
Sure.
a larger scale as a whole, I know exactly what they want, what they're looking for, what they're trying to do because I was in their shoes. And so for me to like then go and like promote this boot camp for $10,000 and they're like, we'll give you 20%. So I'm making $2,000 per sale. I could make $100,000, $200,000 on that if I started promoting it. I know I could like make a ton of money, but I would lose a lot of the confidence of my audience. And that is like my top priority. And so when I'm building these things, when I'm making these content, taking these contracts, a lot of it, I have to put it through the filter of how would my audience perceive that if I were to do that? And I'll give you an example. I took a contract. I built an entire Python course for a company. I'm not
Mm.
going to say what company.
Sure.
But part of the agreement was that I was going to then promote it on LinkedIn, which I was happy to do because I built it. I'm really proud of it. It was an amazing course. Um, and when we first talked to this company, they were like, yes, we're focused on helping people who are like disadvantaged and all these things, which I'm like totally for. I'm like, yes, I totally believe in what you guys are doing. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Once I built the course, they priced it up quite higher because they liked the product. They saw my audience and they're like, well, let's price it up quite a bit more. And I did not like that. And I told them. And so I really battled them and fought them on getting the price down because I was like, this is not okay what you're doing. But in the end, I had to do what I had to do. And you know, it really, like, it was painful for me to
Yeah.
promote that product, even though I was really proud of the product. I didn't like the price because I know what my audience is looking for. So it perception really is everything sometimes, and you have to take it especially at where I'm at. I have to take these things into account because it could ruin. I mean, just overnight, you could just promote one bad product, make one bad recommendation that's like a scam or something, and then you have a huge knock to your reputation, and that is really everything in this industry. And so I take it very, very, very seriously.
Yeah. I can imagine so. I mean, as small as the podcast is, people are reaching out for a position as a guest or a sponsorship
Yep.
thing. And I have no clue where to start. Like that business side of content creation, I haven't
Yeah.
even started with it. I haven't even considered it. So I have no clue what it takes to gain experience in that other than experiencing the things that you mentioned, right?
Right.
Saying yes to what feels good, saying no to what doesn't feel good, and then
Exactly.
experiencing what kind of red flags are in there or what could go wrong in such a process. But it seems very difficult because there's nothing out there. You are your own brand, which means it hasn't been. There's no one trailblazing except you, basically. So
Exactly.
yeah, I, I I think that's very difficult. Sponsorships and the more business aspect of content creation. Do you have any other
Yes.
examples where you would say, okay, I found such a great fit and this was a real win-win as well?
Yeah, I would say most of the ones that I do are really good fits.
Mm.
So like I partner pretty a lot with Udemy. I partner a lot with Coursera. Now,
Yeah.
these were the two platforms that I primarily um, uh, how I learned data analytics when I first started out. I took a lot of courses on Coursera, took a lot of courses on Udemy. So like when they reached out to me wanting to sponsor, I was like, this is fantastic. This is exactly what I was looking for. And they have been the best sponsors of the channel by far.
Mm.
I've had a lot of other sponsors, but those two have been perfect fits because I know my audience is looking for good, really solid courses on data analytics at a good price.
Yeah.
And both of them offer their own variation and version of it. And so those two have been to me like, and I've been with both of them for like 2 years. So
Yeah.
like I plan on, continuing to be partners and have them as my sponsors for many years to come because it's been such a good relationship. Not just with like my manager, like they call it like an account manager, not
Mm.
just with my account manager, but also with like just the company and the type of product that they have, I like their product. And so it's been really great.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, Udemy is, I, I got a question like, how did you learn a lot of stuff? And I really couldn't figure out the word Udemy basically, because I was like, there's this platform and you probably know it. And I sometimes
Yeah.
never finish the courses. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
one. So it's the
Yeah,
one that
that's
I've,
the one.
that's the one. It's the one I've used myself the most because for me, YouTube was always first and foremost. It made the most sense, right? And next to just Google searching whatever you needed to do, when it came to tutorials, YouTube was free. So I could always figure out where the quality is because I can see that behind the scenes, what's going on. Do I like it or not?
Yeah.
And then the next level for that for me was always stuff that is a little bit more affordable because you're not going to go from free to like a 10K course full shebang because you're not going to trust it.
Exactly.
You want that smaller step. And that's where I found Udemy. And I was like, okay, this is a bit more tailor-made, a bit more, maybe more recent, maybe a bit more established, I guess, for an affordable price point. And especially if they hit you with the deals, you're like, yeah, I'll buy that and probably do it. No time soon, but still. So yeah, I recognize that as well. When it comes to kind of a final thought I have is, for me, companies, maybe I shouldn't generalize, but there's a issue with collecting a lot of data in the first place, where companies need data to do analytics, but if there's no data, you can't do analytics as much. So then the notion is, okay, we need a lot of data. We'll store and save everything. And then you have this landscape of data where people are trying to find like these golden nuggets where building your value based on the data that you have, all of a sudden you're going to focus on that. But if you collect garbage, you're not going to find any golden nuggets because what you collected is garbage as well. Like I'm struggling in figuring out what the right way is to collect data, what you would focus on, and even how you don't collect as much data because some companies are now also collecting everything to the point where they have big data problems. When it comes to companies starting out with collecting data for them to then analyze on, what would you advise to start off with usually?
Yeah, that's a super tough question. I I've worked with a lot of different companies, and every company collects in some way similar data, like a lot of like demographic for
Yeah.
their customer base and or clients or whatever you want to call them. Um, but the actual data that every company collects is very different, and even
Mm.
departments within companies are very, very different. Um, Again, I don't know if I can make any recommendations on exactly what to collect,
Mm.
but I think that you have to know what's going to drive your company forward. Like what's gonna be the thing that you're gonna be like, if this were to excel, if this were to go down, if this were to go up, that would change how we would do our business.
Yeah.
Then you need to track that, right? I think you have to figure out like the business questions first, like what's important in the business, um, before you start collecting data. Because like you said, one of the biggest issues, and this is something that I've worked at a few startups with. So like they would have me come in and they're like, hey, we want you to look at our databases, look at our data and see, and we want to walk you through like our strategy plan for growing the company. And that's like what I've consulted on. It was awesome. So I just went in and I took a look and I'm like, what do you do with all this historical data? Because you guys are storing like terabytes and terabytes of like data back here. Like,
Yeah.
what is this used for? And we're like, well, we don't have any use for it yet, but we might. And I was like, well, this is like, 3 years old.
Yeah.
When you first started the company, like, have you ever used it? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, let's look at your storage costs. And then we looked, and I'm like, you know, you need to have like a retention plan in place. Like, how long are you storing this data? How long is it actually relevant? Because if this data becomes irrelevant after 6 months, then you don't need to store it after 6 months.
Yeah.
Or if you do store it in like a cold wallet or something that is super cheap to store, because you guys are storing it in like this hot wallet, like ready to use, and it's costing you a lot of money. And so, I think that there's so many factors to that. It's really hard to make any single recommendation, but I think keeping a business focused or business mindset, even with the data that you're collecting, is really important.
Yeah, I like the statement that you made in looking at the variables that will shift. And if they shift, you will do your business operations differently. I think that is then
Right.
an essence of the data you have to store. And I like that you also confirmed kind of my assumption because I'm not working in the data space necessarily, but it is something I've heard from
Sure.
colleagues in different signals here and there that companies create their own big data problems just by virtue of storing everything. And I don't think
Yeah.
that is a good way of approaching that. I
Right.
think, um, especially when they store it, as you say, in a way that they can just query it real time, right? But if you've never used it,
Right.
you're never going to need it real time, which doesn't make any sense with the way you're storing it in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
it's, go ahead.
It's just it's a problem that every company has. Like there's no company that has like perfect data. And so eh, I think that the best thing you could do is just take a step back, really prioritize the data. Like we talked about with other things on that we've talked about. It's just prioritizing, right?
Mm.
Like what's the most important things that you need to focus on right now, and what things can wait, and like really making sure those data pipelines and your data storage is all like really good for those things, and then come behind and like what else would be nice to have, and then kind of like getting to that after.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I've really enjoyed this conversation and how it went from your joy in education, how you started your YouTube channel in the little side business you're creating. I'm sorry we didn't get to touch on everything we would have wanted to, or maybe the audience is still interested in things. When things go live, let me know. I'll put it in the description so people can check it out when it is actually live. And otherwise, is there anything you'd still like to share before we leave off?
I do a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of webinars and stuff.
Hmm.
Normally at the end, I like to make like a small little like snippet in there if you don't mind.
Okay.
Which is just that, if you're listening to this and you're trying to break into tech, or if you're trying to break into analytics, or whatever you're trying to break into, really, is that it does not matter your background. It does not matter where you came from. It does not matter if you've never made over $20,000 in your life. You can do it. And just to like never give up and shoot for the stars and just keep going, whether you're in, a country way across the world, or if the United States or wherever, anybody can do it. And it can be life changing. And so, don't give up, give it your all, and like really put your effort into learning those skills and focusing on it. And I think anybody can make it if they put in the time, the effort, and they have the heart for it.
That's beautiful, man. No guest has ever taken the stage like that and sent out a message like that. That was awesome. Cool. We're going to round it off here, everyone. Thank you for listening. I'm going to put all Alex's socials in the description below. Alex the Analyst, Alex Freberg. Check him out. Let him know you came from our show. And with that being said, thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next one.